Dennis the Menace, and Dennis the Menace. Both debuted the same week in March 1951, the American one on the 12th, and the British one in the Beano a comic dated the 17th, with some sources saying he debuted a possible 10 days earlier. Which one is the best Menace though? Spoilers, it's the British one. I mean, come on, just look at this weird poser. He doesn't deserve the title Menace. This is just a good-intentioned kid who doesn't even mean to cause harm. My Dennis? My Dennis would break his face. The US Dennis was created by cartoonist Hank Ketchum. He based his stories on his own family, including his own son, who was called Dennis. Menace comes from when his first wife burst into his studio to complain that their son had wrecked his bedroom when he was meant to be napping. She then proceeded to call Hank's son a menace. And how did the British Dennis come about? Well, apparently the publisher just doodled him while chatting to his eventual first artist, David Law. Okay, the American one wins this round, but I like the doodle story too. Most British Dennis comics in the Beano back in the day would involve him causing trouble on purpose. None of this good intentional crap. This Dennis was a scumbag and he loved it. He would beat up his effeminate neighbour Walter for 4 reasons, usually involving Walter appreciating flowers. In the cartoon series, Walter was more antagonistic and a lot more snobbish, but most stories I read in the actual comics, he would just be minding his own business and Dennis would just beat the crap out of him. American Dennis, this guy, he would... He'd hang out with his neighbour, Mr. Wilson, his elderly neighbour who just wanted to be left alone. Fucking bad dude. Usually Dennis would just try to be helpful and it would cause a fire or destroy Mr. Wilson's life's work. You know, it was all very innocent. In the movie, he becomes pen pals with a gross criminal, Switchblade Sam, played by Christopher Lloyd. Alright, that's another point to American Dennis. Little fun fact, but in the TV series, this Dennis lived in 627 Elm Street. Pretty neat, huh? I wonder, was he a Freddy victim? Come to think of it, look at that Freddy jumper. Oh shit. Design-wise, they don't have a lot in common, other than a slingshot and a kind of striped top. Both iconic in their own way, but look at British Dennis. This guy, he's so cool. He wears this big, dirty black and red top. He's got those shorts. Look at those meaty socks. This guy doesn't mess around. He looks like an actual brute. His design was so good that Beano would introduce later characters in a similar style, such as Roger the Dodger with a fetching black and red checkered look, and Minnie the Minx, who basically dresses the exact same but with a French beret. They later redesigned his dad to look more like Dennis as well, which I really hated. What a terrible decision. It's classic Milhouse syndrome, where kids in shows and comics need to look exactly like their parents. British Dennis also has a much better cast. His long-suffering mom and dad, who back in the day would slap Dennis silly for being a terror. Then there's his neighbour, the Colonel, who is similar to Mr. Wilson, only way better. There's also Sergeant Slipper, Walter and the Softies, his granny, and later they give him a sister called Bee, who was introduced in a multi-issue storyline, which they rarely, if ever, did. And of course Gnasher, the Abyssinian wire-haired tripound, who later got his own strip with his son Nipper. Then there's the rest of the Beano, who he crosses over with regularly enough, as well as the Dandy characters occasionally. But nobody cares about the Dandy. Banana Man's okay. American Dennis, he's Mr. Wilson, and his parents, he has some bland friends I guess, but they're no curly or pie face. The American Menace has some movies though, and both have their share of cartoon series, with the 90s Dennis and Gnasher being the best. I did like the American cartoon as well though. The British Dennis went on to have other animated shows of much lesser quality, including one where they make him a good meaning wimp like American Dennis. The animation style for this second series was terrible though, and trust me, I know about bad animation. But which Dennis is the better Menace? Well, as an impartial Platinum Beano Club member, as well as being part of the Dennis and Gnasher fan club for almost 25 years, ding! Members know what I'm saying. This Dennis is a thug and an actual menace. He should be put in juvie or some other kind of prison, given the Clockwork Orange treatment to sort him out. The American Dennis is just a child who needs more adult supervision. His parents are the real menace. To be honest, looking back and reading some of the US Dennis strips, I have to admit they are actually much better written. Their audience was far older and more sophisticated than the young children who read the Beano. I have more nostalgia for Dennis and Gnasher in the Beano, but those US comic strips really hold up. I must be getting old, but in terms of comics, the US one is better. It's better written, the illustration style is much nicer, but hey, at least Dennis and Gnasher still have that 90s cartoon. And that's the tale of two Dennises created at the exact same time. I hope to in the future to make other videos covering the Beano and its many characters. I even want to look at some special issues, like when the rest of the Beano cast took on the Bash Street Kids in a soccer match. That issue should have been made into a cartoon, it was fantastic. But who do you think was the better menace? The rad chav Dennis from Beano Town? Or the US softie? It's the one I like.